It's time for Twig, This Week in Google episode 55. Could this be the week that Google finally started being evil? Their deal with Verizon makes us wonder. We'll analyze it in great detail next on Twig.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 55, recorded August 11th, 2010. Carrier-Humping net neutrality surrender monkeys. This Week in Google is brought to you by Ford and voice-activated sync, featuring true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, and more. Available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. For more details, visit syncmyridepodcast.com. It's time for Twig, This Week in Google, the show that covers Google and the cloud. And online with us right now, of course, the great Gina Trapani of smarterware.org. Hey, Gina, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
I have the wrong picture up. Oh, don't worry. Pay no attention to the man. There you go. Hi, Gina. How are you today?
Hello.
Gina.
Good. How are you doing?
Gina's been in mourning all week over Google Wave, biting the dust. But you're still...
Did you see that there's a protest group started?
Well, of course.
I did.
There ought to be.
SaveGoogleWave.com.
Save the
It's
wave.
a pretty sizable protest. I'm impressed with the pluck of my fellow Wave enthusiasts.
Well, they said there were 1 million users. That's a lot. I mean, it's nothing compared to Farmville, but it's a lot.
Oh, that's just sad.
You should have written the complete
Cows in Wave and it would have been fine.
the complete guide to Farmville. You would have done much better. But anyway, you can still get the book. It's a collector's item now. Complete guide.
It is a collector's item.
You notice I changed your lower third, though. It's going to say smarterware.org from now on.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Wave?
Wave? I don't know. Also with us, as you probably heard, Jeff Jarvis. He is the author of What Would Google Do? And Google is still in business, so the book is still available.
For now.
For now. I think Google will last, but there is a copy of it. What Would Google Do? I keep it by my side at all times. It's a book for all business people. What would Google do in this situation? That's a question I ask myself all the time.
I'm afraid we're asking this week, yeah.
This week we have a very, very big question, and joining us to help us with the discussion, I can't show her because she's on the phone, because her power is out in Austin, Stacey Higginbotham of GigaOM.com. Stacey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. Stacey wrote a very good article talking about your blog post, Internet Schminternet, Mr. Jarvis. Stacey, would you summarize what happened this week between Google and Verizon?
Sure. Together, the two of them came to a compromise agreement over net neutrality. Net neutrality has been an issue for, almost 5 years. And last year in September, the FCC had opened up a whole proceeding kind of trying to establish regulations for net neutrality. And they kind of got bogged down. And so Google and Verizon, they've been working together for a while on this since the proceedings were open. And on Monday, they just launched with, basically, this is how we see net neutrality. We think it should work.
Yeah, except that everybody in the world went, what? In fact, some people even said this was a sure sign that Google is evil. Somebody called them surrender monkeys on Wired.
Wired did, yeah.
Carrier-Humping surrender monkeys.
Okay, let's get it all out.
That was Wired. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was. A lot of anger about this. Google said, well, what was Google's response to the criticism?
I haven't heard it yet.
No, their response... The only response we've had from Google and Verizon, other than the editorial in the Washington Post, was the press conference on Monday. And both Eric Schmidt and Ivan Seidenberg were terrible on the press conference.
Eric is very bad at this stuff. He has consistently proven that he does not know how to spin.
Oh, yeah.
Which is
that
maybe
was
that's
really
that's might be a good virtue actually, but. So
yeah,
Google's position was kind of, in my understanding was, well, look, it's not everything we would want, but we wanted to take this opportunity to at least get some rules about net neutrality. Essentially what it sounds to me, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, and Jeff and Gina, please weigh in on this, but it sounds to me what the Google-Verizon Pact did is say, yeah, there'll be net neutrality for everybody except wireless carriers. And wireless carriers like Verizon and AT&T, who recently weighed in with, yeah, we agree. Wireless carriers should be allowed to do basically anything they want, including tier, differentiate services, charge more for some, less for others, essentially completely abrogate any idea of net neutrality, and build, in effect, what some critics have called a dual internet, a public internet, and then a private telecom-based network for value-added services.
Just the fact that we're using the term public internet makes me want to kind of stab myself in the eye.
Yeah.
Because
really
that
does.
implies that there's another internet, which is exactly what Jeff wrote about, right? Internet and
There's a
schminternet.
couple of internets, right? I mean, it's that, yes, you have this old dog internet showing you cat videos on YouTube, but you're not in your house right now? Oh, that's not the internet. I said in my post, that's the schminternet, as in internet schminternet, right? And it's a news service. It's a an education service that didn't exist before. Oh, sorry, sir, that's the schminternet. And on the schminternet, we'll take you through all of our new fees and restrictions and regulations. Please hold.
Well, let me be the devil's advocate here. And there's some precedent for stuff like this in the early days of cable, for instance, cable internet. The FCC gave cable companies a lot of concessions. For instance, the power of monopoly, saying in order to justify the cost of building this out, we believe the internet's important. We're going to give you some concessions here. Isn't that what's going on? That because of it's clear that anybody who's using an iPhone understands that when it comes to wireless internet, it's a different beast. And so doesn't it make sense that there be some concessions?
No, I mean,
No.
one thing, it's not the government doing that now.
Okay.
Sorry, Stacey, go ahead.
Go ahead, Stacey, and then we'll go to Jeff.
No, I was just going to say, so the wireless stuff, I will 100% agree that you cannot have the same exact network management practices
It's
for
clear.
wireless.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not enough bandwidth.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But the way that they've phrased this, instead of fighting for as much as one could hope for in terms of getting some kind of reasonable network management and coming up with some ways to define that for wireless that may be different from wired, Google and Verizon have hijacked the whole process, taken it outside of the realm of the FCC.
Yes.
And what's likely is Congress is going to listen to this and say, oh, yeah. And the FCC is already in a position right now where Congress is looking askance at it and saying, whoa, there, you don't want to regulate the internet.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Stacey. I think that the problem here is that this was not the FCC or the government giving concessions. This was the companies asking for their own concessions and saying this is their ideal. And, you have Google, which only a year ago was pushing for the white spaces around broadcast to be freed from regulations so that they could become, quote, Wi-Fi on steroids, in their words, and could provide competition to the wireless providers. And, the whole idea of mobile and wireless becomes an oxymoron. It becomes ridiculous. It becomes meaningless. So I walk with my iPad, which I don't have, but let's imagine I did. I walk with my iPad from my home when it's on Wi-Fi. I walk outside, it goes to cellular. Oh, sorry, you've just gone to the schminternet. Now you can't get this and this and this. Now you have to pay for this and this and that. And if that wireless so-called, that mobile so-called, came from some new provider like white spaces, new technologies, well, where does that go? The internet is the internet is the internet, damn it. And if we end up with multiple internets, that sucks. What Stacey's really quite right about is the problem is these guys, and I still don't understand why Google did this. I do not get why Google did this.
It feels like capitulation.
It really does. And the problem is that these guys negotiated the future of the internet without the owners of the internet sitting there. And the owners of the internet are us, damn it. And we've got to yell and scream and have a fit because the internet is not Google's, it's not Verizon's, it's not the FCC's. it's ours. And I hate to plug this old post that nobody cares about, but this is why I wrote this Bill of Rights in cyberspace.
Love this
because
post.
if we, the people, don't stand up on principle and say, butt out, ass wipes, get out of here. This is not yours. This is ours. Yeah, we pay you for the broadcast, but what we want is more competition, more choices, more openness, more development, more people on the internet. And if we start doing this, it's going to clamp down on this, and it's going to clamp down on our economy as well. Sorry, end of spiel.
Axel Librius in our chat room quotes a past Google statement that says, there's no network problem allegedly solved by prioritization that cannot also be solved by additional bandwidth. Google in the past has said, just throw more bandwidth at it. Now, I guess that you still haven't answered my devil's advocate question, which is, because of the bandwidth-constrained nature of wireless telecommunications, is it not unreasonable to say it should be treated differently than land?
Leo, by that logic, then shouldn't fiber to the house be treated differently from copper?
Because it's more capable. All right, go ahead, Stacey.
Well, I was going to say carriers can treat it differently in a way that's perhaps competitive. So things like congestion pricing, and I know people hate people hate tiered pricing.
Right.
I'm against it as a principle, but if you're worried about congestion on your network, don't limit people to, 5 gigabits or gigabytes per month.
Just charge them more.
Or charge them more for it. Charge them more during times when you're experiencing peak usage. Recognize the fact and tell consumers about the fact that if for some instance, like a hurricane hits, their YouTube streams are going to be, deprioritized below voice calls. That makes sense.
That's interesting. I had never heard that before, Stacey. Is that a solution that people have been proposing?
That's what Eric Schmidt will talk about that. When he was at the thing in Tahoe last week, he talked about figuring out how to prioritize traffic, and he made it sound like what Verizon and they were agreeing to was something like that. And the carriers will also say that. That's kind of their friendly face of this. But there's no rules in place for that, and it's hard to write those rules into legislation without them being kind of subverted later on. And that's why this is such a contentious issue. I don't know if you guys want nuance or not, but that's...
We do want nuance. We're absolutely... That's kind of what the show is about.
We feed on nuance. Nuance is our middle name.
And I think that's, to me, what you're going to see is a very, and we already have seen, is very black and white. I'm against it, or I don't know anybody who's in favor of what Google and Verizon have done, but presumably somebody is, AT&T anyway. But I think there is more than just the yes or no to it. That's what I'm trying to get at. It seems like there's some rationalization for giving, at least temporarily, and maybe that's the mistake here, that this doesn't sound like a temporary measure, but temporarily giving wireless companies a little pass. No?
I think there's a place for doing real case-by-case adjudication. That's probably the wrong word, at the FCC for net neutrality kind of rules.
Right.
The problem is right now the FCC doesn't actually, it's unclear if they have the authority to actually enforce any of that, which is what this whole process is designed to do. So implementing some kind of network neutrality in talking about reasonable network management on wireless networks, by saying that, you at least get something down. And then when cases come up, the FCC actually has the ability to go in, say, hey, carrier, don't do this. Right now, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, Stacey, isn't that part of that is that the FCC, of course, as of right now, does not have authority over this.
Well, there's some question about it after the Comcast reversal.
Right.
Although I've had a number of offline conversations with people who say, well, you can't interpret the Comcast reversal too broadly. The court didn't say the FCC doesn't have the right to do it. They just said it wasn't doing it correctly in this case. So it's very unclear. It's very unclear what the FCC's mandate is. And of course,
what the FCC is trying. Do you want to know?
Yes, I would love to know. Well, what does the FCC think of this? I guess they'd be another group that's against this because it's undermining their authority.
So my sources at the FCC they're staying silent on it. They don't want to comment basically on this because it's something that they feel like talking about it condones this as a legitimate solution.
They don't want to legitimize it at all.
But there is a clear power vacuum. There's a clear lack of leadership from the FCC right now because of the whole reclassification debate, which is what you're talking about after Comcast, where they're trying to figure that out. And net neutrality is actually tied to that because if they don't have the authority to like legislate or regulate broadband, they can't implement net neutrality. So they're really closely tied. And the FCC is trying to work this from all angles, and I personally think it's failing miserably. And that gave Verizon and Google the ability to step up and propose this and get so much traction. I mean,
Google says that this is really they're proposing a blueprint for legislation. It sure would be nice if Julius Genachowski or somebody you know somebody at the FCC, Gina. You were talking about if somebody stood up and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't what."
There was a comment. There was an official comment by Michael J. Copps. He said, "Some will claim this announcement moves the discussion forward. That's one of its many problems. It's time to move a decision forward, a decision to reassert FCC authority over broadband telecommunications to guarantee an open internet now and forever."
Yes,
and this is my favorite part. And to put the interests of consumers in front of the interests of giant corporations.
Yes.
That was the most heartening response I could have possibly. I mean, that was like
just one of five commissioners. He's just one of five commissioners, and so Copps is coming out strongly. So you at least now see some discussion, some fighting. I just put on the friend feed. Susan Crawford, the brilliant Susan Crawford, wrote a post this morning, basically telling the FCC to grow a pair.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. I think Stacey, you're right. There's a vacuum. I think, Gina, you're absolutely right that what Copps says is what they should all be doing. But the problem is he's basically protesting against the FCC from inside the FCC.
Well, there's a long history of that, by the way, of division among FCC commissioners. That's not at all unusual. I'd like to know where Genachowski stands on this because, I mean, he's the one who needs to take a leadership role here. And he's been very outspoken for internet net neutrality. I think he had a lot to do with the broadband plan that the FCC put forward.
Leo, he did have, when the New York Times had that story on Monday saying that they had reached a deal and presented it somewhat differently than this, Genachowski did say that basically he was pissed about this and that there would be no more meetings under their aegis.
That's right. They did call off the conferences. That's right. Stacey, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, those conferences weren't going anywhere, and so Genachowski called those off because they weren't making progress. So once this whole thing became public, he knew he was going to fail. You might as well just fail without being castigated for having all these secret meetings, which is what was happening.
So instead, we've got this backroom deal between two major corporations with what we thought were different interests, but apparently are maybe not so different.
Well, it's not really a deal. I mean, it's not policy, right? I mean, Verizon and Google don't create policy.
It's proposed policy.
So it's a proposal. It's a proposal. And also, let me just say, the wireless thing broke my heart, but the rest of the document is great. Like I'm with them the whole way.
The new services part, Gina?
No,
the wireless part.
Okay, what is the new services part? Let's hear that story. Jeff, what is the new services part?
Maybe Stacey's probably a better position to say it, but it's another carve-out.
Stacey?
Yeah, there are three problems. One, it emasculates the FCC. Actually, one would be wireless, but we've talked about that.
Right.
And then there's a carve-out for managed services. They don't call it that. They call it, additional network services. And that's things like Uverse or Fios TV, or anything that the carrier, and the FCC has been all the way back in October and September was worried about this because it's a way to say, in the worst case scenario, this may not happen. I may be crazy, but to say we're going to develop our broadband infrastructure and we're going to allocate X amount of it to our advanced network services, which cost extra. Which, you may have to pay as a consumer. And if you want to get on it as a service, like a web service, maybe you have to pay. Maybe you don't. We're not sure. And then what happens is you've got this, public ghetto.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that? If Verizon has a Vcast service that lets you watch broadcast television, what's wrong with them saying
That's fine.
This is a private service?
But here's the problem, Leo.
Okay.
It's a big open door. It's a hangar door sized exception because it says, in fact, the example they give is that if an opera wanted to broadcast in 3D and it used a lot of bandwidth, that's new, and then that's outside of net neutrality. Well, so anything new is the schminternet.
Right.
And that's definitely
they
a
also
problem.
are
So the EFF makes a really good point.
Go ahead, Gina.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut off Stacey. I was going to say, you know, the additional online services is very vaguely defined, right? We don't really know what that is. I mean, they're trying to future-proof. They're trying to say, you know, new things are going to come out. We don't want to squash innovation. We want those new things to happen. We don't know what they're going to be, but we're just going to call them additional online services. That's troubling. Also, the definition of reasonable network management, you guys all seem to agree, like, oh, yeah, mobile networks are different. I mean, yes, they're technically different, but are they really different? Like, what is reasonable network management? What does that mean? Exactly. Like I felt like the
it could be as much as blocking YouTube over wireless.
Right.
And
so like wireless networks, like the constraints that they are under, I mean, you've got a certain amount of spectrum, right? And you have a certain amount of bandwidth that fits into each like megahertz of spectrum. And the issue is if you send that to towers and people are moving in and out, and it's actually really complicated to keep track of. And so there's the limited amount of spectrum, right, which kind of limits the capacity at any one place and point in time. And then there's also the issue of tracking these users as they're trying to like stream, which is really hard and like intensive over the wireless network, while other people are trying to do like voice calls. And, you know, maybe we shouldn't be prioritizing voice calls. And in like a 4G network, we won't have to because they're all IP.
Right.
I don't know.
We know
there are issues with that.
We know from the Wired article, or at least the Wired article asserted, for instance, that AT&T did propose to Apple that YouTube videos stop after 10 seconds on the iPhone because it was killing their network. That's, I'm sure, the exact kind of thing that these wireless carriers would like to see. Is that a violation of net neutrality, or is it just a reasonable statement that we just don't have the capacity yet?
It's a really good reason for AT&T not to build up their capacity. Every single network has
to.
limitations. And the fact is that you have to build up your infrastructure. The demand is there and do it. Yes, I appreciate the technical limitations of the mobile network, but figure it out. It's a technical problem. We can figure it out, you know? I don't know. It's the same thing like Jeff said earlier. Why treat, internet over copper differently than broadband?
Isn't some of this because we've seen how anti-competitive the wireless companies are in the past?
I think that's it. And Google says, Google acted as if, wireless is different because there is competition there. No, there's not. There's
the other way around. Yeah, it's the other way around.
Exactly. Let me try it this way on Leo. Just 3 steps. Step 1 is that imagine if this document came not from Google and Verizon, but from Verizon and AT&T.
Oh, boy.
Period. We would probably not be very surprised at all.
There'd be no discussion.
It'd be like a few moves, a few inches.
Right.
Well, but they do a few things. They make a few concessions. Okay, we see what they're negotiating, right? That's step 1. Step 2 is what shocks us so much, that Google's involved in this, and I'm going to come back to that. And I don't fully understand why. I think Wired came to the closest to say, well, because Google's now a phone company.
They're a carrier-humping net neutrality surrender monkey.
So that's where Google shocked.
That's why this is so heartbreaking.
Well, by the way, this isn't the only. This might be the week we say Google suddenly stopped not being evil.
Stop not being evil.
Because there's also this document, and there's Eric Schmidt going around. Eric Schmidt says the future of the web is no anonymity.
Right.
So
let me try one more step on this. One more step. Which is that if someone were speaking on behalf of the internet, of what we used to call consumers, sorry, Doc Searles, then how would any policy be written? Now, to answer Gina's question about mobile, or agree with Gina, the answer would be, if you say you deliver the internet, you deliver the internet. Damn it, period. And we have standards for what it means to deliver the internet, and delivering crappy internet is something consumers can sue for.
Right.
Because if I tell you I give you milk, and what I really give you is water with chalk in it, you can be sued.
Right.
You give me an internet that's not really the internet, F you!
So this is good. So what it really comes down to, and this is what you've been saying, it's what is the definition of the internet?
Right.
And what this
who decides that?
Right.
We do.
Right.
But we're not doing it, people.
We're
not doing it. We're not standing up and making these principles.
It's letting these big companies decide what the internet is, and it's not what we've all said it is.
here, Leo, I got an idea just now. Watch out. Coming out before your very eyes. The TWiT community should deliver their principles of the internet.
I think
We
you did
should
it, Jeff.
create
You have that
our
great Bill of
version.
Rights. I would point people to the Bill of
our
Rights.
version. It'll be geekier in this case than just big principles. But we should say what we expect the FCC and Google and Verizon to do. Because no one's saying
when you
that.
do
No
it,
one's
can you
speaking
file a
for
comment?
us.
You can. I'm sure you can. And I don't know if you'd file with the FCC, but you could also.
No, you have to file with the FCC. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They have a proceeding open and want comments. File
Great.
there.
Where do we do that?
Oh, God.
We'll find it. I'll find it. The other
We'll find that
thing
out.
is the EFF has gotten involved in this, and I think the EFF might be the people that we need to look to try to defend us in this regard.
Yes.
Yeah. Leo, I didn't mean to walk over your statement because I think there's two big things you were talking about there. One is what the proper view of what the internet is, and how we do that. But the other one is this being Twig, Google. And I, as Google fanboy, just really can't figure it out. I think that they're going to hurt themselves. I don't get the strategy. What did they gain? You know, again, if Verizon,
They said they realized that they'd have to give some concessions up in order to get some other good things, and so they gave this part. By the way, it's not theirs to give up, but
what? Right.
but they said we're going to give up on these items. By the way, the EFF says there's also another troubling. As long as we're going to get into this, there's also another troubling part of the proposal that says it applies only to lawful internet content.
Yes, that's scary too.
Yeah.
Who would
Yeah.
is copyrighted material? Well, it sounds like distribution of copyrighted material by somebody other than the copyright holder is unlawful. And then that, the EFF says, opens the door to an entertainment industry and law enforcement efforts that could hinder free speech and innovation. Of course, it would. They want to do this desperately.
They're already talking. I mean, they're already commenting on the net neutrality proceedings at the FCC, talking about.
So you've got this axis of evil, which I'm sad to say that Google has joined between the big content companies, the big carriers, the wireless carriers. Now Google's involved, and the feds. Of course, the Congress is just going to say, "Well, hey, if Google says it's a good thing and Verizon says it's a good thing." Actually, I'm sure
one of the Twitter's just sent me that a resolution was just put in the House commending Google and other companies for advocating uncensored internet, adhering to free speech principles, and keeping the internet open for users worldwide, from Representative Carolyn McCarthy,
Yeah.
July 13th, 2010. Oh, well.
And the truth is a lie, and black is white, peace is war.
I just don't get it. So Leo, you just said Google got things. What did they get?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess they got on the land-based internet. They got a concession of net neutrality. So,
Right.
Old steam-powered internet.
yeah. Of course, everything's moving mobile. So I guess that's what they said. Well, hey, at least we were able to get some rules made for net neutrality on the one side. Why Google is not fighting for net neutrality globally is beyond me. And this is one of the reasons we've given Google a pass for so long, is because it was always my understanding that Google made its money by the free flow of the internet. And for them to say, no, yeah, okay, but when it comes to wireless services, maybe that's not the best thing. What, are they getting a cut?
Well, it doesn't.
Well, yes, they are. I mean, in the sense they're now in the phone business.
They're in the phone business.
They've given
They
up
are in
the
the
Nexus
phone
1.
business.
Part of this deal too is giving up the Nexus 1.
It's all part of the
this
same
whole
thing.
deal,
They had an opportunity to say we're going to forward things along by creating a carrier-less handset with an open source operating system.
Yep.
We're going to support the Open Handset Alliance. We are going to break the monopoly of the cell phone companies in the U.S. And instead, they said, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. We make so much money with Motorola and HTC making these handsets for Verizon and AT&T. Maybe we just go along with that. You know, it's 100,000 handsets a day. That's a lot of handsets.
It's really difficult not to go down that road, even for someone like me. I mean, basically what they're saying is, you're good. Your typewriter is going to work for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You know,
And
there's that,
Google
you know.
it doesn't affect them anymore. And I mean, so just thinking, Google is a corporation. They're out there to make money. And frankly, they have the infrastructure built up that they don't have to worry about wired net neutrality, right? So, I mean, they have They have like CDN-like services. They have the demand on the consumer side. So maybe they thought, heck, we just bought wired net neutrality for everybody, but wireless, it's too much for us, and frankly, we can go it alone because we're here.
Yeah, but Stacey, Eric Schmidt has said that they're going to make more money from mobile than they make from the internet today. This matters greatly to them. He said that in the past. He said that a year ago to Jim Cramer. And so mobile matters. And the thing is, if you get a whole balkanized internet of a bunch of internets, that hurts Google. They can't search across it. They can't place ads across it. They can't get data across it. So that's what I don't understand is that for Google's worldview and way of operating, a balkanized internet, I think, is bad for them.
Well, yeah, you would think it's bad for everybody except for Verizon and AT&T and Comcast.
I mean, are we taking it too far though? Is it really going to be a balkanized internet? So okay, so maybe this is going to happen. Maybe this is what, this becomes policy, and we all have a choice of wireless providers, and some of them let you stream, get your 3D television or whatever, do those special services, and some of them don't, and it forces more competition. It forces more carriers to build up their infrastructure to be more competitive. Maybe it'll be a good thing.
The doomsday scenario. So here's the issue, right? We have we have very little competition in wired internet, and that has brought us to a point where some people have fiber and some people barely have broadband, right? And they pay a lot for it. And then on the mobile side, the FCC, if you look at their broadband plan, they're really trying hard to address all the areas that don't have sufficient broadband competition with mobile. They're really banking. They're banking on that. So if we go to a place where people in 4 years are reliant on Verizon's LTE network to get, their internet, basically, their home internet,
right.
No wired, then suddenly they're stuck on an internet where maybe they only get 10 seconds of YouTube. And that's a problem.
Bingo. That's the problem.
And AT&T and Verizon have been buying up spectrum, and they own a huge chunk of the 7 megahertz spectrum that the LTE, the next generation of wireless, is going to go over. And they're actually doing a lot of things right now, policy-wise, to make sure other people have a harder time competing with that. So
really, Stacey, say a little more about that. What's happening in the future?
So they filed petitions with the FCC to claim interference in certain channels of the 700 megahertz section near where rural carriers have their own 700 megahertz stake. If they get that through, that lessens the incentive for someone like Qualcomm or a chip maker to make chips that work across the spectrum. And instead, those guys will choose to work with AT&T and Verizon because they have a huge customer base, leaving the rural guys with handsets and devices that could cost a lot more. So that's
So
one
we're back
example.
in the GSM versus CDMA.
Well, no, it still might be all LTE, but it depends on what frequencies you're tuning to and how many you want to tune to. These are really nitty gritty, but Verizon and AT&T have really awesome lawyers who really work this stuff.
They have the best Congress money can buy. They put. Google. I don't know how much Google spends on congressmen. I don't think they spend much, but Verizon spends an awful lot. And
and they have these workers. They have unionized workers who vote like they're supposed to across a bunch of different congressional districts. Silicon Valley has Silicon Valley.
Right. You point out in one of your articles on GigaOM that, in effect, this sold tech companies out. Companies like Pandora and Skype are the companies that lose here.
Yeah. Because
they're the ones that are going to end up being blocked on these wireless networks because they use so much bandwidth.
Or they could be blocked, or they could have to do deals with carriers.
They'll have to do deals with carriers. So we're already seeing that. That's what's really happening in a very rapid way, is that the carriers are rapidly asserting themselves in these markets, making deals. This is a deal with Google. Who knows what really happened behind the scenes? These guys.
If you go back to.
Go ahead.
Oh no! If you go back to AT&T and their deal with, was it Prodigy? They bought Prodigy, and then they had this deal with Yahoo. there's still tons of AT&T subscribers who go online through Yahoo, right?
Right.
Because they do.
That's their internet service provider, and their incumbent carrier is AT&T.
And so
it's the Yahoo internet.
Those kind of deals that happen. Yeah, the Yahoo internet.
Yeah, they have a great history of this. You also this is a pull quote from the framework that you put in your article. The FCC that basically says the FCC doesn't have anything to do with this. The FCC would enforce the consumer protection and non-discrimination requirements through case-by-case adjudication, but would have no rulemaking authority with respect to these provisions. Parties would be encouraged to use non-governmental dispute resolution processes established by independent, widely recognized Internet community governance initiatives, and the FCC would be directed to give appropriate deference to decisions or advisory opinions of such groups. It basically pulls the rug out entirely from the FCC's ability to regulate net neutrality. It kills it. I mean, I could see why your commissioner is a little upset here. And the fine, $2 million, up to $2 million. Nothing. It's chicken feed.
It's more expensive to say bad words on the air.
Yeah, and they can't actually. Yeah, that's right. Howard Stern's much more at risk than Verizon is, and it can't make any rules as a consequence. All they can do is fine them.
Right, and those fines could be overturned in court. I mean, look what happened with Comcast blocking P2P.
Right. They have to do it just right. It's basically a tightrope that the FCC has to walk, and they're kind of doomed.
And the EFF was in support of this limited FCC jurisdiction. They felt like this was a good thing.
Well, I can tell you from my friends in the EFF board that there is dissension within the EFF exactly. I mean, there are those who say, well, you got to have net neutrality, and who's going to enforce it besides the FCC? And people said, well, the government shouldn't be involved at all. By the way, and the chat room's brought this up a number of times, we're talking about the U.S. Does this impact anybody else around the world, or is this a U.S.-only issue?
There are net neutrality things happening in Canada. I want to say the UK, maybe France. I know that people are saying...
Does this become the template? This becomes the template for other countries then?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not for every country, but many countries are watching.
Right. So
Stacey, politically here, you've got the phone company and Google basically putting the FCC on warning that we're going to have our own government screw you. Where does this go? Congress is or isn't involved. The FCC was planning this fall to claim provenance over the Internet again. I'm trying to understand the politics of this. What happens next, from whom, how, why? Small question.
Little questions. This is a midterm election year. And I am not deeply steeped in politics. I am like a network nerd kind of person. But my understanding is very little will happen, but Congress will bluster and threaten. And the issue is, no one wants to vote to regulate the Internet in an election year. And that is what people are saying the FCC is trying to do when they do this broadband reclassification process, which is basically them trying to get back power to regulate broadband the way they regulate copper voice lines. And so I don't think much is going to get done, quite frankly.
So that's good.
So why did they do this? That's what I still don't get.
It must have been a tin ear. I must not have realized what the reaction would be to this.
Oh, no. Do you really think so?
Well, I don't. Well, then why did they do it? If they knew that this would be the reaction, if they knew that whatever they said didn't really matter because we're in a midterm election year, if it doesn't even seem to really help their cause, I don't know.
Well, it'll get Congress. Congress will say, this is reasonable, we should do it. Go, FCC, go.
Right.
And the FCC will be like, really?
Right.
Okay.
Well, the FCC lives at the pleasure of Congress. They can only do what Congress mandates. Right?
Well,
So if Congress says that, the FCC's, what are they going to do?
Well, yeah, if Congress writes legislation or changes the communications law to strip them of power, then the FCC would have to take them to
They
court.
have no choice.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm ruining my number of the week, but for the greater good, I'll do it.
Oh, don't do it, Jeff. Don't do it.
In the Pew study on broadband that's just out that Stacey mentioned at the beginning, 53% of Americans polled do not believe that the government should make spreading broadband a government priority.
That's surprising.
That ain't good. Because then there's not the political. You add this all up, and you'd think, well, there's a political will to say stay off our internet, but I'm guessing this number comes out of a fear that that's going to cost tax money or something, and or cause new fees like we have on phones to guarantee coverage, and so Congress will look at that and say, fight for your internet? Well, why?
Let me kind of mix into this batter this confidential 7-page Google vision statement that the Wall Street Journal leaked that shows that Google is right now grappling with this notion of how far it should go in profiting from our private information. Google's considering, building a vast, quote, trading platform for buying and selling web data. Should it let people pay not to see ads? I mean, it's not like they've made a decision, but it seems to be this is all part and parcel of the same thing, which is a Google that has decided to go for the gold and is somewhat leaving behind the principles that we kind of celebrated Google for. I mean, they're a private. They're a public company. They're a business enterprise. This
is what Siva Gundotra and I will probably, if we get selected in, debate at South by Southwest. His proposal is, and I'm right now I'm losing the debate. Thank you, Google. But his argument is
South by Southwest is until the spring. This could get a lot worse, Jeff.
Yeah, I want points on that golf course.
You could be in trouble.
I want Tiger Woods' new handicap. So what Siva says is, Jarvis, you when it came to China, you shouldn't expect Google to do anything but what an evil company does, which is make money, and to expect any more of them is not the case. And I quote Umair Haque and others and say, well, no, nowadays doing evil is bad business. And because we can all talk about you and all things can happen and you're going to be screwed if you do evil. And that's why Google's don't do evil pledge is not a matter of grace from God. It's a business decision to say that if we do evil, well, we're going to screw ourselves.
Well, this is that you're now in the test case.
Yeah, we sure are, man. We sure are.
And here's as users, I think we all want to stand up and say, if we care and we care a lot, and let's see if we can influence this company and keep it on the true course. I'll be very disappointed.
So what do we do then? I mean, the problem is, boycott Google? No.
Well, I'm willing to boycott Google. There are choices out there.
I don't like boycotts as a rule. I think it's more about what we say, and Google does a lot that is good, and I still basically like what they do. I just am baffled by this. We should say, by the way, that we did invite on Google, and Google PR was looking at trying to get someone on the show, and they didn't.
And we'll leave that door open. That's possible. I'd love to hear.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear. I know they listen to the show. I'd love to hear their response, and I'd love to use this opportunity to influence them in the direction that I know that probably Larry Page and others would like them to go in. I think there are a lot of people within Google who believe firmly in net neutrality across all platforms, who believe firmly in privacy, and in doing no evil. And maybe Google's sitting at a joint fork in the road.
No, I think you're right, Leo. One thing I say that this versus other companies is that at least Google asks, and as a result, it defines evil every day.
Well, and that's what they said about this document, by the way. They said this was a private document. This was none of these. Some of these were non-starters to begin with. It wasn't even shown to higher level executives. It's just discussion points. And I think it's appropriate for them to discuss this. Well,
Gina, let me try one on you. Was not giving Wave the fair shot evil?
No, I didn't think it was evil. I didn't. I concede on the Wave front. I concede that Wave didn't have the users that they wanted, that they expected. It didn't reach milestones. It didn't perform, so they killed it. I didn't think it was evil. My question for you, Jeff, is this China compromise again, all over again? So you kind of gave Google a pass right at first for being in China, and then they changed their mind later on because you said, well, they're getting some information there. And so, I mean, can we look at this the same way?
No, I was not on that side. I was on the side. I was on the, just to be clear, I was on the side that said they were wrong to go in China under those circumstances. So I was glad when they stopped censoring.
But did it trouble you the same way that this? See, that didn't trouble me as much as this does. Does this trouble you more?
Yeah, it does, because it's the heart and essence of the internet. China was a case where I think they found that they put themselves in a stupid position. They violated their own standards to make the business. They were dealing with people they couldn't trust. It came back to bite them in the butt. And then they used principle to justify getting back on the track where they should have been in the first place. And I'm glad they got back on the track. Fine.
Right.
In this case, and what you just said, Leo, about, well, Larry and Sergey believe in net neutrality and believe in privacy, we think. I want them to believe in this because it is good business. Because
that's the only thing that will keep that belief going forward. You can't do
precisely.
it in the, you're not going to give up profits in the long run. You are a publicly held company. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your stockholders.
So I want them to be smart enough to do that well. It's why I push entrepreneurial journalism, because I don't want it to be a charity. I want it to be a sustainable business. Right. I want the internet to be sustainable and successful.
Well, and frankly, that's
the reason I got mad about AT&T going to blockades was because it was going to limit use, and more use is what makes the internet grow, and Google knows that better than anybody.
And that's the only reason I've ever had any faith in Google, is because it made sense from a business point of view that they support net neutrality and privacy and all these things, that they do no evil.
Okay, so if we move from a wired world to a wireless world, let's try to just, because again, I'm honestly trying to figure out what could Google's business rationale for what it did this week be. So if we move from a wired world to a wireless world, and Google sees that's where all the money is, and Google is antagonistic with all the carriers, well, they're kind of screwed in their business, right? Because they can't sell their, even though they got a free OS, thank you very much, we're going to use it to try to limit it as much as possible, limit your chances to make money as much as possible, which was Wired's argument. Is that what this is behind? I mean, did the idea of defending the internet stop? And in fact, mobile isn't the internet. It is the schminternet, and it's all new rules.
So what is evil? Somebody's asking in the chat room. What would be evil? Using the information Google knows about us against us.
Sure.
Not protecting our privacy.
Not looking out for us in terms of usage.
Serving corporate interests instead of users.
Right.
Period. Yeah. Not furthering the open internet. Not supporting the open internet.
Open internet is critical.
Google's whole thing. Open internet.
That's what Google founded its business on. That's what is good for its business, and that's why Jeff keeps asking that question. Why, Google? Why? What is the business case for what you've just done with Verizon?
Maybe it gets it further. I mean, maybe it gets it enough of a base. So when this becomes a real issue, and I know it is an issue today, but when it starts really hitting home for people, then maybe they'll have the influence to step up and actually act. I mean,
could it be they're playing a longer game?
That's why I raised the idea of the Munich Accord, and the problem was the Sudetenland just went to Germany, and without Czechoslovakia at the table, right, and it didn't work out very well. Mr. Chamberlain passed the sauerkraut.
It's the Neville Chamberlain version.
Yeah. So Stacey, but they're too smart for that. They know that they sit at the table with the devil phone companies. They're the ones who went in the Spectrum auction to push openness.
That's right. They were in the they were in this on the side of the angels. What happened? I wish they'd bought that Spectrum and opened it up. They compromised there too, by the way. Of course, I can't blame them for saving $3.5 billion or $4.9 billion, but nevertheless. Another opportunity missed. All right. So is this the week, should we mark it, that Google stopped being not evil?
It took us just over a year. Yeah.
This is the test.
I am feeling
Somebody
very much like a
suggested we
jilted
rename
lover. The
the,
rose-colored glasses have fallen off.
We used to be the big, I used to be the guy that said, no, I trust Google because it's in their business interest to be trustworthy, but they're clearly not. They're playing some other game now. I don't know what it is.
I know. Somebody suggested earlier, I'm not endorsing this idea, but we should change the name of the podcast in
This Week in Evil.
Protest. This Week in Cloud.
We could do that, actually.
This Week in Open Internet.
Yeah. Look, there is no question in my mind that every single person listening to this show, every single person who cares about technology wants an open internet. The only people that don't want an open internet are commercial forces that want to capitalize on the internet. They want to balkanize the internet. They want to use it against us. It's very clear. I don't see any black and any gray there. It's black and white, isn't it?
And the one party we had the faith that saw that in its interests, so our interests were aligned, was Google.
We're going to rename the show This Week in Bing, somebody said.
I'm going to start to cry any second now. We may have to go to commercial.
All right, we're going to go to commercial. Stacey, I know you have to run. Thank you so much for being here, Stacey.
Thank you, Stacey. It was great.
Stacey Higginbotham writes for GigaOM, GigaOM.com. And if you go to GigaOM.com, right there on the front page, you'll see a link to all of Stacey's articles. And I like net nerds, so we'd love to have you back if we may, Stacey.
Thanks, Stacey.
Oh, I'd love to be back.
Next time when your power isn't out, we can, we can
get some air conditioning.
Poor Stacey's in a minor power outage, but her MiFi is surviving. Thanks, Stacey.
No, my MiFi died.
Oh, it did?
All right, thank you. Yeah.
All right, well, take care. Well, thank you for joining us. And
is it Verizon?
It is.
Whoa!
Could it be something you wrote?
Thanks, Stacey. We'll talk to you again very soon, I hope.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. There is more Google news. In fact, there's a mysterious announcement tomorrow from Google. We'll get speculation from our guests, our panelists, our hosts, Gina, Trapani, and Jeff Jarvis in just a minute. Before we do, though, I want to thank our friends at Ford for the support they've shown this show. And, in fact, the support they gave us to go to Detroit last week. We had such a good time. I am a Ford fan. I use that incredible Ford Sync. It's in my 2010 Mustang. And if you want to know more about Ford Sync, go to syncmyride.podcast.com. That's the website. It is the true hands-free calling. And by the way, works especially well with Android. I don't want to say anything, but it is really sweet with Android because, for instance, on my Droid X, Sync reads my text messages. It just sees them coming in, reads them out loud in a lovely female synthesized voice, which can make for miles of merriment, depending on who's writing the text. You get turn-by-turn voice directions, true GPS without having to purchase additional hardware. 911 assist, which is great. I just repaired my Droid X with the car because I did that reboot last week, that reset, which, by the way, fixed all the problems I was having with the lag on the Droid X. But so I had to rebond it, and it said, "No, make sure. Do you want the 911 assist on? Because it's not on by default." And I said, "You bet." That's when the airbags go off in the car. The car uses your. This is what's kind of interesting about Sync as opposed to other things like OnStar. It's using your phone, so Sync gets better as your phone gets smarter. It gets better. So that's a very interesting idea. It's kind of a partnership between the technology you bring into the car and the car itself. So if the 911 assist is a good example. It'll call 911, gives you an opportunity to say, no, forget it, I'm all right. But if you don't respond, it calls 911, it feeds the GPS coordinates from your phone to 911, and then plays a recorded message, and then turns on the microphone on the phone and gives you a chance to speak. Help me! Great for this. Okay, that's the kind of, that may be a little bit morbid. There's also some positive stuff. You can play podcasts just by asking for the name. The whole idea is you never take your hands off their wheel, your eyes on the road, so it is safer. Traffic alerts, weather, movie times, and so much more. I want you to give it a try. Here's a couple of ways you can do it. Go to the website, syncmyridepodcast.com. There's some great videos there you can take a look at. Or, maybe easier, just go to your favorite Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury dealer and test drive. I love my 2010 Mustang. I'm looking at the 5.0, the new 2011 Mustang, and thinking, And Jennifer, I showed her the Flex, and now she wants to trade in the Toyota for the Flex. So we may become a Ford family. It's kind of neat when you go to Detroit and you see, American workers in a really high-tech plant. It's got a living roof. It's got sedum on the roof, so it absorbs the water. I mean, and they have solar. It's really neat to see what is considered one of our oldest industrial companies move into the 21st century so aggressively. And you got to give Ford props for that. SyncMyRidePodcast.com or your Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury vehicle dealer today. So, let's see. What do you think tomorrow? Now, the latest I'm seeing is that it might be an Android announcement. New Android feature coming tomorrow.
No, I think we're going to hear that Google is now a paid service.
A penny a search.
Yeah.
Hey, we got to make some money here. The Google blog post, according to a Google spokesperson, it's a small event.
It is a mobile event, though, isn't it?
It's mobile, yeah. They say it's going to be Android, Mountain View. Is it a new app?
So this is kind of odd, right? Because Gingerbread's not supposed to drop until next quarter, right? So we've still got some time for that. So it's not going to be Gingerbread. Most likely it'll be an app or a new feature, functionality.
Is this typical?
The last time,
did they do this typically? They have an event?
The last event like this, they announced turn-by-turn directions. That's what Gizmodo said. So that's a pretty cool feature.
That was huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty cool feature. So I'd love to see something like that. The first thing that came to mind was the streaming music that they talked about at Google I/O, which I kind of assumed would come with Gingerbread, but it was during the Froyo demonstration. And that was that you'd be able to purchase music through the Android market and I think even stream music from your desktop. That would be pretty neat. So I don't know if there's going to be...
That's what I thought.
I'd say if I had to guess.
I thought this was the month that we were going to announce Google Music.
Yeah, like a Google Music app, right?
Yeah.
That lets you stream, and so that
okay.
That would be that'd be my guess. I don't know. What do you guys think?
That sounds right. I'm going to put my money in.
It's a service like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Google Music. We knew they were going to announce that. It would be an Android app, of course. That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
I'm going for it.
Yeah.
They have Simplify Media. Vic did that demo at Google I/O in May. So I don't know. I mean, what else? What else could it be? If it's not Gingerbread, I mean, we know it's not Gingerbread.
That's 3.0. Dell Streak came out or is coming out tomorrow. Maybe they'll show the Streak. I'm excited about the Streak. I think I'm going to run out and buy one. That is a 7-inch Android 2.1 based tablet from Dell. That is priced below the iPad. Of course, it's a smaller screen.
7-inch or 5-inch?
Is it 5? I'm sorry, 5. Yeah, 7 is what the rumors are that Apple's next iPad will be 7. It's 5. You know, the 4.3 on the Droid X or the Evo is almost iPad-like. A little bit more might be enough.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I wonder. This is by the way why I really like the Google space for phones versus the Apple space for phones. Because you know what happens at Apple? Somebody makes prototypes of the iPhone in, 3.5-inch, 4.3-inch, 4.8-inch, 5.4. But make the whole range. Steve comes in. They're all on the table. Steve looks and goes, "Yeah, let's do that one." And that's it. There's no discussion. There's no consumer testing. They don't ask anybody. Steve goes, "That's the one we're going to do." Versus,
there's no data.
There's no data. And I admire that. I love that. I'm a big fan of the auteur principle. I like the idea that some great thinker with vision can do something. But I also love the idea that anybody can take Android and put it on any size they want, however stupid it is, and let the market decide.
And you could go to a store, that same table is there with all those choices, and you get to say.
You decide.
That's it.
That's the thing, that's the difference right there in my mind. That's choice. And who wants a carrier-humping net neutrality surrender monkey to choose? Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong company. Plastic Logic is killing the... I'm sorry, I just love that phrase. In fact, it's going to be the title of the show. You know that. Plastic Logic has killed their Q Reader, which
earned it.
Yeah, they earned it. The Q Reader, everybody was excited about this Kindle killer. Just shows you how hard it is to kill the Kindle. In fact, Amazon is reportedly working on other devices. Amazon wants to be in the hardware business, apparently. Come on, the more the merrier. That's great. If you were in Russia, you might have been bit by a Trojan in the Android marketplace, since removed, that steals from you by, it's an SMS Trojan that sends messages to a paid service. You get the bill for hundreds of dollars, premium rate service. Just a word of warning. It's not out there anymore. We should mention Ted Stevens passed away. Died in a plane crash. Sean O'Keefe, the former head of NASA, survived, thank goodness. Senator Stevens, known in the cloud circles for coining the phrase, the internet is a series of tubes. It's kind of sad that that's how he's going to be remembered. South Korean police raided the Google office. This is, again, the backlash on this Street View collection, I think, right?
Yeah, it is Street View, and it's starting up again in Germany. Google's about to start Street View again in Germany. Did you see the other great story this week? Wirtschaftswoche, otherwise known as Vivo, the Business Week of Germany, reported that Google was buying photo drones. And the company that was selling them was bragging about this, and it was doing no one any favors because the drones were shown focusing in on a woman in a bikini on a blanket and then looking in the windows of houses and all kinds of things. And it got picked up, of course, all around. So I pinged Google PR, and it was a Saturday, so they couldn't do anything. But Monday, first thing I heard, no. That was the company did not buy them, is not looking at them. A executive at the company bought one of these to experiment with it.
Well, so, I'd like to experiment with it, actually. It sounds like fun. I'd like my own Predator drone. You also see the story that on Long Island, I think I put this in the feed, Long Island local governments are using Google Earth to find illegal pools. Yes, I thought that was hysterical.
Yes.
So it's this combination. Now you imagine the drone, rather, or the droid drone, perhaps, it'll come to that, can look and find, illegal deck construction or something.
Well, I hope that there's a student at UCSD who has developed, Arturo Flores has developed a program that removes people from Google Street View automatically and quite effectively. I didn't realize this. Apparently, according to this article, in Tech News Daily, Google blurs people's faces. I never really...
In Germany, you have to. Yeah, it's part of the ridiculous part of this. What I loved about this story, Leo, is if you look at the picture on the left, the person is gone, but the dog with the leash is still there. I think it's a very... I really hate this, because I think it's a... You remember the neutron-bomb? It killed people, left the buildings intact. This is a neutron-bomb version of the world. Because we're all so scared now. No, don't show me. I'm walking down a street.
Oh, no.
What could happen, folks? What could happen? And it presents a very strange view, I think, of now we have streets filled with little ghosts that are left there. Dogs without owners, And by the way, the other thing that happens is sometimes the shoes are there. Which reminds me of when I came through the World Trade Center right after the planes hit.
Right.
The mezzanine was filled with nothing but shoes as people ran out of them. It's really I don't like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to see a world with just shoes and leashed dogs.
A couple of people in the chat room are suggesting that maybe Google Me will get announced tomorrow, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's definitely a mobile event, and I think Google Me will be a whole other thing. I don't think that's going to be just a small event.
We're in agreement.
Do we now imagine? Sorry, Leo.
Well, you're going to say the same thing.
Go ahead.
We're in agreement that Google is doing a Facebook thing.
I'm pretty sure. I had a long conversation with a former Googler who shall not be named, and there's definitely a social product that's getting built, and it's kind of a black hole in terms of engineers. There are engineers from all over the company kind of getting pulled to work on it.
And they never emerge?
Well, it's a big secret. I mean, no one knows what's up.
Really? I like that.
Well, don't they have a new executive? What's his name? Is it Vince, who's in charge of mobile?
It's Vic Gundotra, right?
Vic.
Yeah, Vic.
Yeah, Vic.
So Gina, didn't you hear that Vic was assigned to this as well?
There was a story to that effect.
No. Oh, was there? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that specifically.
Yeah,
but I believe that that Rick Clow, who we were going to have on the show, has something to do with it, because I think that this new social product has to do with profiles, and I think that he wants to come on the show when this
and what did he say? What did he say? September?
He said, "When I have something to talk about."
He was very careful. It was Liz Gaines writing in GigaOM. Google's social czar is Vic Gundotra. He is officially. Well, he's the guy who did the keynotes at Google I/O and did so well, I thought.
Yes, very well.
Google was looking to the outside for a head of social. Did apparently hire a recruiting firm. However, ended up giving the nod to Vic.
Vic is a good bet. He's charming. Developers like him. He presents well.
And he's technical.
He does
good
big
bet.
things.
He's not a marketing guy.
Yeah.
Been there since 2007. He's relatively new there.
Well, let me ask you this: because Google has now left the Nexus 1 behind, and we see nefarious motives in that, does this mean that Google will never do a pad?
Oh, because they said Eric said they were going to do that at that famous party in Los Angeles.
Right.
We will do our own pad. I don't know why. I always think of Eric talking with a German accent. I don't know why. We will do a pad. Yeah. Why is that? Is that I don't know.
When Kara Swisher wrote about my schminternet post, she didn't understand the Yiddish joke that was there and said I was actually making a play on Eric Schmidt's name, which I wasn't doing at all.
Internet schminternet.
It didn't even occur to me.
Kara,
Well, you know how I feel about him, so I think this whole thing is just really amusing.
Kara is such a wasp. Is she a wasp? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
She's such a wasp.
So I thought of the other one. I gave her examples. I said it's like Kara Schmera, Jarvis Schmarvis,
Right.
and Verizon for Klimt.
And there is our Yiddish expression for the day. Any other stories before we get to our tip and tool and deprecated number of the week?
No, I got numbers.
Go ahead.
Slight Gmail rollout this week.
Oh,
a little
yes.
redesign.
I didn't want to say it because I thought maybe you'd, I don't know, mention it.
Yeah, I don't really have a tip related to it. I'm actually a little dubious about it. It kind of
Well, it gives you
rearranges
some
some of the
features.
links on the top left side. It puts contacts and tasks above the compose button. So tasks is really high up on the left side, which is interesting because it's still just this little pop-out product. You know, it's like on one hand, it's like, oh, there's a commitment to tasks. And on the other hand, it's like, it's just a little pop-up.
Oh, I shouldn't show
Still,
that it has
so-
all these phone numbers in there.
Yeah.
Whoopsies.
So, it is cleaner and there's a little more room for your messages. And the
You can
contact
sort.
section was big, was really was overhauled and is looking much better.
Yeah. That's the big
Contacts
change
was
is
always one of
contacts.
Gmail's. Was one of their Gmail's weaker points. So I think that there are definitely improvements in contacts. And this redesign hasn't rolled out to Google Apps accounts yet because they're saying that they want to do a little more work with contacts. And I think that probably has to do with grouping contacts on your domain and that kind of thing. But hopefully we app users will see that soon.
Gina,
Yes.
this is off topic here, but I just saw on Twitter, username Leahy asks, how come nobody has talked about Orkut moving to using Google Wave Codebase in UI?
What?
Is that going to happen?
No, that's a joke.
Oh, not that
Is that a
I
joke?
know of.
It's a joke.
It's got to be a joke.
I lost the irony. Sorry.
Maybe not. I don't know. Let's go. Orkut's going to start looking like Wave. Let me see. I'm going to Orkut right now.
This is someone from England. They have irony. Someone from New Jersey. They have no irony.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I don't really see Wave becoming merged into the Orkut code base anytime
I'm actually
soon.
still not really clear on what Wave's, what's going to happen with Wave. Is it going to I mean, I know that Novell has that Pulse product, which is based on Wave. I'm not sure, where else it's going to live on.
Gina, could someone take over Wave and make it live? I mean,
It's
could
open
someone say,
source,
Google, you
right?
don't want it?
Or is
Right.
it open source?
Much of it is open source. From what I understand, not all of it is open source,
Right.
and like decoupling parts of it, some of the most crucial parts from the Google Codebase was kind of was a challenge. And I don't know that I don't know that it's a totally standalone, run your own server product yet, and they're not developing it anymore. So I'm just not sure if that's possible. Someone said, "Hey, well, can't just people install it on their own server and run with it?" And it's like it just hadn't quite gotten to that point yet. So yeah, the outlook is grim.
Aw.
Fortunately.
All right, let's get our tool, tip, and the number of the week, starting with you, Gina Trapani, your tip of the week.
A quick tip for Android users this week, and this comes from Kevin Purdy, who's writing in the book on Android. You can hang up phone calls by hitting the power button. So you don't have to hunt for the button on your touchscreen. You can set this up in the accessibility settings. So if you go in Android into settings and accessibility, you just check off, use the power button to hang up calls. So if you're doing something or driving or something, you can easily, hang up your phone call without having to, hunt on the touchscreen by just tapping the power button.
Very cool. Jeff Jarvis.
Well, I got thanks to the Twitter people, I got some numbers, so I'll use them real quickly. The Pew numbers are interesting. They're out about broadband, and this one, I'll highlight this as well. In 2009 to 2010, the percentage of white Americans who have broadband went from 65 to 67%, which is a leveling off of speed. But among African Americans, went from 46 to 56%, which is a huge growth and nears, starts to narrow in on the digital divide, which I think is very good news. That's one number. Another number is, of course, 129,864,880. We know what that is?
Oh, say it again.
129,864,880.
The number of Wave users who are now on Orkut. I don't know. What?
That's the number of books that exist in the world, Google says, and they're going to scan them all. Two more real quick. One is 129. That is the number of blogs that TBD.com, a new Politico local service in Washington, D.C., is working with in their network, which is the way to do it, folks. I want to give
tell me about TBD, because I've been reading about that. What exactly is it? The Post?
No. It's started by people who used to be at the Post. Jim Brady, who used to be the online editor, now working for Politico, and Albritton is starting a new local service that launched this week that is doing all things right. Its policy is, in my favorite line from bumper stickers near you, do what you do best, link to the rest. If somebody else does it well, they'll just link to it. They are working with 129 local bloggers and sending traffic to them and making them the star, which is the right way to go.
Neat. Not like the HuffPo where, is it like the HuffPo where they kind of put the bulk of the article there, or is it?
No, what they do is if a blogger in the network has a really good article, they will promote the hell of it on the homepage of TBD and link directly to the blogger,
that's
not
smart.
to the blogger at the site.
That's very smart.
I think that's really good. And finally, the last number of the week, of course, has to be 19.75, the number of hours per week that the now fictional Spencer spent on Farmville.
The Hopa.
I put the link up. We all see now that it's an actress named Elise, and it was a hoax, but it was such a wonderful hoax.
You know, I have to say, when I first saw it, I had no thought in my mind that it was a hoax. This is the woman who, it was 33 whiteboard things where she quit her job and then outed her boss as being a complete Farmville junkie. All because he called her an HPOA, and which I'd never heard of.
I hadn't either.
Yeah.
Honestly, Gina, I had never heard of it.
And it was a creation of two brothers who do the chive.com, and they've done it before a couple of times and fooled the mainstream media. I loved it that it was TechCrunch that they wanted to fool and did, in fact, fool with that story. And then it was TechCrunch that outed the actress. So
I also love the fact that it got, as great quit moments go, it got upstaged by the guy from JetBlue.
By the JetBlue guy.
Who was real.
It was real.
Right.
Although,
we think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was real. Yeah. You know, it's hard to say, you know, of course he endangered, it was, you know, you don't do, but boy, what a great way to make an exit. And I hope, I'm actually having an exit slide built into the studio here, just in case. And I got a couple of beers in a special break glass in case of emergency.
You're not going to grab your cell phones and slide out with a fistful of cell phones?
It was a little bit of a screw you, Mike Arrington moment. I kind of had some sympathy overall with him. It's one of those things you do. It feels good at the time, and you deeply regret. But you got, and boy, he's going to benefit.
Laugh about it after.
Oh yeah, I mean, and this guy is he's like a hero. He's a hero. He's Robin Hood.
He's going to make a fortune. There'll be TV shows, speaking engagements. He can pay for the slide.
Yeah, yeah. And you just,
I have one little plug.
Yes.
I have one little plug this week. I'm doing a new video series for a fast company. I'm doing kind of a tech help Q&A. So I'm doing personal Skype consultations for folks who have questions about Google, cloud, personal productivity, software, whatever questions you want. So if you hit my blog at smarterware.org, submit your question. If we choose it, we'll record a little Skype Q&A video action, and we'll publish it on Fast Company.
And of course, if you've been reading my Pulse blog, you would have known that because I immediately bookmarked that in Pulse, and that's my tool of the week. And this is a Android app, although it is also an iPhone and iPad app. And as I was traveling around, I used it quite heavily to try to pull stories for the show. Pulse is a really awesome news reader that, you know, we talked a lot about Flipboard when it came out. This is predated it, but I think does a nice job. And they've recently added a feature where you can heart something, any story, and it will add it to a Posterous blog that it sets up for you automatically. And you can then follow people's Posterous Pulse blogs. I'm having trouble getting to mine right now. I don't know if it's down because I've just sent everybody there or what, but I have one. It's leolaporte.pulsememe.com, and that's actually one of the first stories I bookmarked on there. Gina, was
awesome. Thank you.
Yes, was that video series you're doing, because I think that sounds really, really cool. Pulse is $1.99 in the Android store. You know, I have to say, one thing that's really become clear, a bunch of big Android applications came out, big name applications that have been on the iPhone only in the last couple of weeks. It's very clear that developers of portable applications are no longer seeing the iPhone as the only platform, that they realize you have to do it for Android if you're going to do it. And so anybody who is saying, oh, I want to use Android except that XYZ isn't on it, I think those days are now gone. I can't think of a single major
That was pretty quick,
app.
too.
Yeah.
And from the time Android came out to that, it didn't take long.
Big Evernote update. There were a couple of apps that just came out that were iPhone only for a long time. I was very pleased to see. And ClickSet, and I haven't tried it. I was going to make it my recommendation, but I haven't tried it yet. ClickSet just put out Android and iPhone apps. ClickSet is a kind of Friendfeed replacement that I've been on for a while. That similar idea. It collates all of your social media into one Twitter-style stream, and they've got 70 services. It's kind of an amazing real-time thing. They just released an Android app, and I would have recommended it, except I haven't had a chance to really play with it yet. But I suspect I'm going to be doing that a lot. And then there's one other app that I've been using in conjunction with Foursquare. It's called PicPlease, P-I-C-P-L-Z, and it allows you to do a Foursquare check-in with a photo, which I really like the idea that you do the check-in with a photo, because it just gives you a kind of this neat visual of what people are up to. So
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, a lot of times when
That is a good idea.
yeah, so and then you can see what people are up to by location as much as by the person you're following. And so they're trivial photos, you know, it's what I'm eating or what it's, but I think it's a lot of fun. I used it quite a bit while I was touring around, and I think I probably will use it more and more, and it's on the Android platform as well. I don't think it's on the iPhone. I haven't seen it on the iPhone platform. So there's a few recommendations. It's hard to just pick one when it comes to Android. We love downloading those Android apps. There's SFO. There's My Son on the Plane. There's My Son Waiting for the Plane. You know, a lot of times they're silly. I don't even know what that is. Oh, that's somebody else. Okay. There's Hyde Park. Had a beautiful time at, that's the Vanderbilt Mansion.
Oh, that's a beautiful mansion.
Oh, have you been there? Incredible. I love that area.
I went to school nearby.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I did. I went to school in Poughkeepsie.
Oh, you went to Vassar?
Marist.
Marist. Okay.
Yeah, the other Vassar.
The other Vassar. The one next door.
Yeah, that other school.
It's a
near
beautiful
Vassar.
area. That Hudson River Valley is just spectacular.
Gorgeous. In the fall, there are just a few weeks where you just sit on the river and look at those leaves. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Good for Abby. Bard is great.
Bard has this great art museum where I took a picture of the, they have a white flag flying over the museum that says, "Please don't kill us." I don't know what it means, but I love it. And the peaches. And the peaches.
I saw you tweet that, and I was like, what is Leo talking about?
It's this. Well, that's the pick, please, right? So anyway, that's another fun one. PICPLZ.com. All right, everybody, we're out of time. We're way over time. Thank you very much, Gina Trapani. Smarterware.org. That's the place to go for Gina's great posts. She's on Fast Company and lots of other places as well. And, of course, that Fast Company video series. If you go to, where's the best place to go to that for that again?
Just go to my blog, smarterware.org. You'll see where to email your questions, your submissions.
It's a great idea.
And we'll get it going.
Wish I'd thought of that.
I want to be Leo when I grow up. Are you kidding?
You
Come
are.
on.
You're better than me already. But you don't have this. This is a dog collar that tweets for your dog.
That's it. Until I have that dog collar, I am never going to be Leo.
Leo, I dare you to wear it.
I was thinking, why should I let my dog tweet? I'm going to tweet. I'm just going to put it on.
Now you need a dog collar that takes photos while you walk and sends them a pic, please.
The minute that's available, guess who's going to buy it?
Leo, then you'll sound just like Craig Newmark's Twitter feed. Squirrel!
Squirrel! Squirrel! Squirrel! Jeff Jarvis is at buzzmachine.com and always welcome to join us. We love having him on. We thank you all for being here. We do this show every Wednesday at around 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 2000 UTC at live.twit.tv. You can follow along on our chat room, irc.twit.tv. And we have a friend feed with all of our links. That's friendfeed.com/twit-TWIG. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us on This Week in Google.